Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So, like I said, every week stay tuned for a history of each franchise, and we started with Atlanta Hawks last week and we're going to go in alphabetical order. So today we are doing the Boston Celtics franchise history. And I don't know if you can tell, but I accidentally scratched my face. So if you see a little scratch on my face, you know why. It wasn't a cat, it was me. And it kind of hurts. So I put a clarification in the description of the Hawks video, but I want to explain a little bit further in this video just to start off. Before the league started, like the NBA started in 1949, there were two separate leagues, the BAA and the NBL. And the BAA, which is actually the league that the Boston Celtics were a part of, they had, like I said, two separate leagues, and they came together to form the NBA. So that's how the whole thing started. That's why the NBA wasn't technically invented, even though these teams were already playing. So for Boston, they were, like I said, one of the teams that were part of the BAA at the time. They were founded in 1946 by Walter Brown, who also owned the Boston Garden at the time, where the Boston Celtics played for a little bit. And they're one of two charter franchises from the BAA who still play in their same city. Four seasons of the Boston Celtics franchise, they weren't having much success. They had losing records until they hired the great Red Auerbach. And when he was first hired, let me just tell you, he had all the responsibility in the world. He did the road trips, he scheduled all the road trips, he had no assistants, he did all the scouting, he ran all the practices. Talk about responsibility, he had to do everything by himself. And we all know Red Auerbach had that little dynasty, which we're gonna talk about in a few seconds, but just think about it, like I said, imagine having to do all that by yourself. So like I said, we know the dynasty, Bob Cousy, Bill Russell, all this kind of stuff, but there actually was a time where Bob Cousy might have not been part of the team. According to the internet, Red Auerbach didn't want to draft him at a certain point because he was too flashy. However, Cousy's contract eventually became part of the Chicago Stags, which that franchise went bankrupt, and then in a dispersal draft, he actually became part of the Celtics. But one of the most historic trades obviously happened right about now, when Red Auerbach traded Ed Macaulay, which I think I pronounced that right, but maybe not, to the St. Louis Hawks for the draft rights to Cliff Hagan and the second overall pick, which, who do you think that became? Bill Russell. And you know, they obviously acquired more players in the long run, built their dynasty, John Havlicek, Casey Jones, Sam Jones, all these kind of players. So this is when the dynasty got started. And I'll put some of Red Auerbach's accolades over here, but like I said, that man is one of the most beloved in Celtics franchise history, along with obviously Mr. Bill Russell, Larry Bird, which we'll talk about later. But he just really helped get them started. He was doing everything they needed him to do. Like I said, he was pretty much on his own for at least a period of time. So he was doing great things for them. And obviously they start winning championships. We know Bill Russell won 11 rings in the end. So obviously he was doing well. This team was doing well. Franchise was succeeding. And in the 1966-1967 season, Red Auerbach was like, you know what? I have a lot of responsibilities and I need to focus on general manager. So he said to Bill Russell, hey, can you take over as coach? And Bill Russell became the player and head coach. And with the guidance of Red Auerbach and the talent and obviously the good coaching and good play of Bill Russell, the team continued to thrive and win. And after a few down years, Red Auerbach restructured the team, and they won two more titles in 1974 and 1976. That 1976 finals included a dramatic triple overtime win against the Phoenix Suns. But one of the strangest transactions happened in 1978. Did you know that the Celtics were actually planning to move to California? Irv Levin, the owner of the Celtics at the time, wanted to move to his hometown, California, but he ended up just trading franchises with John Brown, who owned the Buffalo Braves at the time. And I think we know who got the better end of that deal. Not only did John Brown end up with one of the most historic franchises in NBA history, but in 1978, guess what Red Auerbach did again? Found another star. And with the 6th pick in the 1978 NBA draft, the Boston Celtics select Larry Bird. We all know Larry Bird, Larry Legend, another icon for the Celtics. I'll put some of his accolades over here on the screen. There are a lot of them. And just a couple years later in 1980, he was not done. Red Auerbach was a genius. He sent the 1st and 13th overall pick for the 3rd overall pick, which ended up being Kevin McHale, and he also got Robert Parrish, excuse me. And in their first year together, which was Kevin McHale's rookie season in 1981, they won the championship. They advanced to the finals 5 times in the 1980s, and they won again in 84 and 86. And a lot of these, obviously, these matchups were against the Lakers. Those were those, you know, iconic Celtics-Lakers rivalries with Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all that kind of stuff. And this was a really important time for the NBA. These matchups, the Celtics versus the Lakers, Larry versus Magic, all that kind of stuff, it really helped repopularize the league, or at least not even repopularize, but at least gain more popularity. At this time, the league was experiencing down ratings, like loss of interest. It just wasn't looking great. And it was just amazing to see these two teams like face off against each other, you know, the rivalry. And it just really brought interest into the game. And it's been reported that sports journalist Larry Schwartz from ESPN said that Larry and Magic and those rivalries and matchups and stuff like that saved the NBA from bankruptcy. However, down seasons were coming for the Celtics for the 1988-1989 season because Larry Bird only played 6 games because he had bone spurs removed from his heels and he obviously had surgery, so he couldn't play. But even when he returned the next season, he was dealing with a debilitating back injury, and it was just really hard, you know, obviously to play at the level that he was playing at before. The roster was aging, and it was just getting a little tough for the Celtics. But the franchise saw a drought, so they missed the playoffs from 1995-1996 season to the 2001-2002 season, which was obviously a big deal for a franchise that was winning so many titles and had so many like great players and stuff like that. But here's something that's very interesting that I learned along the way doing my little research. In 1995, when they were building the TD Garden, well, now it's the TD Garden, and you know they were trying to make the new arena, it was actually named the Shamut Center. Shamut, I think I pronounced that correctly. Shamut. Let me just make sure I got this correctly looking at my notes here because I always take notes. Actually, like I said, it was built in 1995 as the Shamut Center, and the naming rights were sold to a Boston area bank, the Shamut Bank. Okay. Shamut had beaten out its rival, Fleet Bank, for naming rights and had just secured the name, and construction got underway and all that kind of stuff. And prior to completion, the two banks made a secret English. Prior to completion, the two banks made an agreement and merged together. It was so secretive that the marketing teams didn't even know. So not only did they actually end up battling each other, like for naming rights when they ended up being a merger, like they ended up merging together, but at the same time, Fleet Bank ended up taking over, and what that meant was that it was named the Shamut Center. Not only was the name obviously not the name of the bank anymore, and the bank didn't exist anymore, but every seat in the arena had the Shamut logo, like the name, stamped on every seat. So they had to redo the whole thing, redo the whole color scheme, like everything had to be redone. And then the arena went through some more changes, you know, another bank merge and this kind of stuff. But here's something very interesting. In July of 2005 is when the arena was finally named the TD Garden. But from February to March, they had something called Your Garden. And what that meant was you can go on eBay and purchase the naming rights for the garden for one day. But for that month, you could buy the rights and you could name the arena for a day. Only 2 names were rejected that they would not put up. And one of them was the Derek Jeter Center. And that was bought by a Yankees fan. He said apparently in like the article that it was a joke, but at the same time, like a Yankees fan bought it and wanted to be named the Derek Jeter Center, but obviously Boston Red Sox, trying to transfer like sports here. The Boston Red Sox and the Yankees, New York Yankees rivalry is just, you know, one of the biggest rivalries in sports history. So there is no way the Boston Celtics were going to name their center the Derek Jeter Center, even if it's for one day. So the 2000 era, you know, like I said, they finally made the playoffs again, but they were early playoff bounces, you know, nothing too crazy, until 2007, 2008. They had probably the greatest, or one of the greatest turnarounds in NBA history. The year prior, in 2006, 2007, they had Paul Pierce and they had Rondo at the time, but they only won 24 games. In the offseason, they acquired Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, and guess what? They ended up having the best record in the NBA with 66 wins, and yeah, they won the championship. They played the Lakers in the finals with Kobe, and they beat them. And this became the Celtics' 17th banner, which is, you know, iconic. In the 2010 finals, they also faced each other again, Lakers versus Celtics, but the Lakers with Kobe came out victorious this time. Unfortunately, the roster started getting older. In 2012, Ray Allen left to the Miami Heat in free agency, which we know he hit one of the biggest corner 3 from Chris Bosh, rebound, you know, all that kind of stuff. And after the 2013 season, Boston Celtics made a trade with the Nets, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to the Nets. And yeah, it was looked at as one of the worst trades for the Nets at the time, like, because they gave up so much. But it actually ended up working out now because you see that they developed a lot of young talent in the last couple of years. And now they have KD, Kyrie, and Harden. So at the end of the day, like, whatever. But at the time, It was a big trade. What looked like it was probably going to be a major rebuild, actually they ended up making the playoffs 2 years later. They signed Isaiah Thomas, who we know blossomed into an all-star for them, and he was playing so well and the team was playing well, and then obviously, you know, he got hurt, and then they traded him for Kyrie Irving, and then they signed Gordon Hayward in the offseason. So now we were looking at a roster of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kyrie, Gordon Hayward. Like, they were looking like they were supposed to be something special. And then the first game, Gordon Hayward breaks his ankle. Very, very sad. And then obviously when he came back, like, it just took a lot of time for him to get his legs underneath him, and it seemed like there was some kind of tension. I don't know, like, I'm not trying to make any kind of reports. It just seemed like something wasn't clicking on the court. And then Kyrie gets hurt. He didn't play in the playoffs. The Celtics took the Cavaliers at the time to 7 games. That was a rookie Jason Tatum. So, you know, things were looking pretty good. And then obviously Kyrie, you know, is now in the Nets. He's not with the Celtics anymore. And now, you know, the Celtics were trying to make a really big push this year with Kemba, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown. But Jaylen Brown, as we know, just got hurt and he's out for the season. So it's looking like they got a plan for next season, but they got a lot of young talent, and we'll see what happens in the future. So there you have it. That is the Boston Celtics franchise history. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time. Bye.